you mentioned the homework that you do. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you prepare for the start of a new series every time you guys take on a new opponent? What kind of steps do you go through preparing?
Well, it's a little bit like writing a book. I do a lot of free association, but it's just try to think of things that might be interesting to people. There's some of the basic stuff, like when the Yankees, especially if it was a team we hadn't played in a while, just to try to get myself up to speed on what they've done recently, so that when we start the broadcast, I can talk about, well, they just finished a 3-game series with so-and-so, or then these are the guys that are hot, and these are the guys that aren't, and so it's a learning process for me. So a lot of that stuff is pretty basic, but then I'm looking for interesting tidbits, like I spent some time yesterday morning researching Xander Bogaerts of the Red Sox, because I thought that here's a guy that speaks 4 languages, and he's from Aruba, and then it just turned out that Felix Dupont grew up in a port city in the northern part of Venezuela, which is really close to the Netherlands, Antilles, and then that sparked something else, and you think of something else, and now you
climb the ladder.
And it's just kind of these tributaries, and a lot of that was kind of part of the book too. If it sparked something that I felt was interesting, and I'd never met Brad Mills before, so I wanted to do some research on him. And when I violated one of the baseball rules, which is you never talk to the starting pitcher the day that he's pitching. So I introduced myself to him yesterday. It was very brief. But, so those are the things. A lot of the research comes during the game. I spent about maybe an hour and a half. I spent maybe an hour and a half yesterday getting ready. But today, because it was day game after a night game, I didn't do anything before I got to the park. Because it's pretty rough.
You always sound so prepared.
Yeah, well, a lot of it is also talking to people. Like I wanted to talk to Sogard yesterday because he went to ASU and Mills pitched at Arizona. Maybe he faced him at some point. So you're looking for a little nugget. So that's kind of the way it happens.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So you touched on it on the Moving Partner chapter, but if you could expand a little bit on just how weird that 2006 season must have been, because the team was on such a big upswing, making the LCS that season, but no Bill, no Roy Steele,
right?
And for me, that was the weirdest 1-2 punch ever, because since I can remember, I'm listening to Bill King in the radio, listening to Roy Steele in the building, and I didn't have either, and it still bothers me, almost 2 years later, and I can just imagine from an insider's perspective view that had to be just the weirdest season ever.
It was, and it was, a lot of it was just missing his friendship. We'd be on the team buses and I'd look over and he wasn't there. We sat together on the plane and we did a lot of things, went out to dinner a lot, and so there was a huge void for me that was gone. And that was hard, and that would be the case if you lost a good friend, no matter whether it was in work or not work related. But it was hard during the year because I realized how much I relied on him and leaned on him. When you're working with Bill King, I was just the number 2 guy. And he was nice enough. I did 4 innings the last 4 or 5, or however years we were, at least 3 or 4 years we were together. We almost put the play-by-play, but he did 5 and I did 4. He was still the lead guy. And I realized that now this is much more my responsibility. And I realized how much I leaned on him. And he didn't need anybody, he could carry every broadcaster who ever lived because he was that good. But the main thing is that, and there's still times, and I wrote this, where I just like to tell him something. Something happened, I'd like to talk to him about it, because we had that kind of relationship. So it really was hard. The thing about getting Vince is that Vince is an incredibly hard worker. And so I never had to worry about not getting information, because when I go to the ballpark, my focus is on Bob Melvin, because I'm a manager show. I spend a lot of time with him. And I know that we're not going to miss much, because Vince is incredibly prepared. And that was really important to me too, because Bill was extremely prepared and dedicated. I mean, he was, up until the day that he died, he never mailed it in. So we wanted to kind of keep that going.
Have you ever seen Bob Melvin as hot under the collar as he was today?
Not really, no. You know, what was great about that was with all this replay, you don't see any arguments anymore.
Yeah.
You know, there's this well-orchestrated, choreographed thing where the manager comes out. Now he stalls, now the bench coach is on the phone, now the pitcher doesn't get up on the rubber, and the hitter doesn't get in the box, and now the manager goes back, and now there's no argument.
And Shape's going to hold up his number.
Yeah, right. There's no Billy Martin kicking dirt on people. So today was kind of cool. It was kind of an old-fashioned. It was an old-fashioned argument. It was good. Yeah.
I was just wondering, when was the last time you were just at a loss for words, just couldn't on the air? What was it that brought you to that? Or have you?
There have been times when my brain has been mush. Honestly.
1980 games.
Yeah, long games were tired, or maybe you haven't gotten a lot of sleep, or maybe you're not in the greatest frame of mind, or you'd like to be. Honestly, the other day we were in Anaheim. Coco made that catch on Hamilton's ball, and I said the ball was out. So,
With the fireworks?
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
the fireworks.
The fireworks.
that didn't affect me. I just missed the call, And so there are times when I, for whatever reason, and the only time I really beat up myself if I feel like I wasn't mentally as prepared as I should be.
It was pretty funny listening to you guys try to figure out when, I'm blanking on the guy's name, but the guy from the Cardinals in the game, he said abandon the base.
I didn't realize that.
Beltran abandoned the first base, and they called it out. But it was hilarious because everyone in the booth was like, I have no idea what just happened.
Because you know what happened? Lowry made a great play on that ball.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to recap the play by going through in my mind, and we had a TV monitor, what Lowry did. So I was focused on the play, and just assuming that Beltran was at first base, all of a sudden he's out, and I had no clue.
Yeah.
It's a good lesson, you should really kind of keep your eyes on the field, right? But it never happened before, so.
Even right away, Lowry's disappointed. Lowry knew right away what happened.
Yeah. But there are a lot of times when one of the things that Bill did is he was a master of the language. As I wrote, he would write words in his scorebook. As a young broadcaster, I tried to incorporate those words into every broadcast. So he was a self-taught person who had this kind of erudition which was unmatched in sports broadcasting. And so I hate those times when there's something happens and I can't find the right word.
Those times are rare, Ken.
Yeah, well, they do happen, and that's, I've tried to study words myself. I think we have an obligation to be communicators.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You talk about studying, and obviously practice is important. What are some of the other things that you found early on in your career that really made you excel and maybe become not more professional, but what was it, reading stories, or you talk about language? Were there other things that that helped you, your broadcasting?
Well, and the other thing is, I think, before I answer that, I tied myself in knots at times in my career, overanalyzing, because I got to a big market pretty early in my career and it freaked me out. I thought I was ready, but then I think I wrote that in there, that, oh my God, I went from Petaluma to San Francisco, and I thought, now you've got to sound like a major market announcer, instead of sounding like yourself. So it took me a long time to come around to realizing that ultimately you have to sound like yourself. And Bill never listened to tapes of himself because he was just Bill. And that was a wonderful thing about Bill, was that he didn't overanalyze, he just was himself. But I've just tried to stick to, I guess my philosophy is, you start with the game being on the field. So that's the main thing. I realize this is a very subjective business. But people might have an opinion on your voice or your cadence or how you call a game. But the two things, number one was that I was going to be as professional, as prepared as I could possibly be. And number two, that I was going to try to represent myself professionally. And it starts with the basics. And the basics is, what's the count? What's the score? Is he a left-hand hitter or is he a right-hand hitter? is the outfield toward left, is the third baseman on the grass. And so I think it all comes back to that. And when I've listened to a lot of tapes and I've talked or counseled a lot of other announcers, and my feeling has always been, go ahead.
Good luck.
That before you can try to impress me by all that you know, tell me that you can call a game. And so I think that's the one thing that you start with. Can you call a game? But there's a process of trying to learn to use your voice or to enunciate or project. It's like any other job, I think. You just kind of get into it and try to do the best you can.
So you didn't try to change your voice like the ESPN's announcers? They all changed their voice.
No, I was real fortunate that this is how I am.
Yeah, but voice
But,
You got a unique voice.
without sounding like, too self-important or whatever, it's if I use it like an instrument, and I've tried to, there are times when I drive to the ballpark and I'm listening to an album or listening to some music and I'm thinking, I hope that people can listen and get maybe it'll be a pleasing audio experience for people when they listen. That's kind of what I'm trying to do.
You've done it.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Thanks. Take a seat. There's food over here. Yeah.
Speaking of words, I was looking through the book and I kept expecting to find physiognomy in there somewhere.
Oh yeah, that was a cocaine word, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
that was. But what I wanted to ask was, I was thinking the other night, watching the last couple innings of the Kershaw no-hitter.
Yes.
With Vin Scully calling it.
Yes.
And I was wondering, what kind of agreements do you have with Bill as far as how much you're going to talk during his innings and how much he's going to talk during your innings? And did he ever get into a zone, like maybe in the ending of a great game like Kershaw? No, everyone would have said,
Yeah. Right. Most of it was unspoken. Where it was just a feel thing where you work together with someone and you hope that it's maybe a little bit like playing in a band where you have a little feel for that person. The first inning or two, Bill, I kind of let him do his thing as he wanted to set the table for the broadcast. He always encouraged me to come on the air with him. Because when we worked with Lon, they didn't interact a whole lot on the air. It was kind of one of the mandates that we had when we started working together, was that they wanted more interaction. But I always felt, most of the time, that when it was late in the game and the game was close, that I kind of let Bill do his thing. Because he was the master of that. I don't think anybody could, like I wrote it, or describe the Dame Mall like Bill could. And so, let the master paint his picture. And I would come in when I felt that I could really add something that was interesting, or maybe vital, maybe something was going on that I thought was important to point out. But there were a lot of times when I just let Bill do his thing. And I always would encourage him to come on in my innings. So we never really talked about it. Anything else?
In terms of calling games,
Sure.
There's been a lot of debate over the years of homers versus non-homers, and I know, the A's broadcasters for years have been very fair, I think, in terms of giving the proper attention to a great play no matter which side makes it. I kind of grew up used to that, and I value that more than maybe, for example, the Ken Harrelson in Chicago, though I think they appreciate him for what he does. How do you weigh in on kind of the importance, if you will, of conveying the information versus not openly rooting for a team, if you know what I mean?
Well, I think that there's a tradition of being even-handed here in the Bay Area. I think it's really important. It's at the cornerstone of my philosophy of how to do a game, and I think Scully is quoted in here. If I say that everything is great for the A's, when something great happens, it doesn't mean anything. So I think it's fair. I think it's important to give the other team its due. And I think it's important to give, if there's some interesting information on the other team that might be interesting to people, might allow them to get to know the other players a little bit better. So I think it's really important. Now, my nature is I'm not a hatchet fan. I'm probably not going to be overly critical. But if the A's mess up, I think it's important to mention it.
I think,
Because I think, you know, with what we do, it starts with credibility. If I lose my credibility, then I'm done. I got nothing left. So, and the A's have always been very supportive. They've never once said one thing about anything I've said.
and you mentioned that, and it's funny because just about half a week ago, somebody pulled up a clip from a few years back. It was a game when the Rockies were in town, and I forget who was at second base, but it was one of those plays where the ball dropped in between second and right field where Cuss was playing that night. And you said something about, you know, people are paying good money to come see this. Yeah. That was the one time, but I appreciate that because it's true. I mean, you should never, I mean, and Jim Johnson comes up a lot, you know, because he's struggling in Oakland. You don't really want to boo a guy because he's failing, but people are going to boo. You know, they pay money, they're going to voice their opinion. But you always want to see people giving their best effort.
Bill was a lot more emotional than me, a lot more unvarnished, and probably let his feelings out more than I do, and that's just probably our different personalities. And I really respected that in Bill. That night, I did say, I said that this is unacceptable, and people are paying good money, and they deserve something about that. Right, and then Ray Rauter wrote a column and he said, surely Korach will hear from the A's front office. And I never did. Nobody ever said a word. He said, Billy Bean, I'm sure. Whatever. But those times are rare. And I have to say this, I've been fortunate. The team's been so good that I don't have to, there's not a lot I can say. And the other thing is, if somebody's 0 for 28, I don't need to tell people that he's playing like shit, right? And he's 0 for 28. So I don't want to take gratuitous shots at people. I think a lot of people in our business that try to make a name for themselves by just taking shots at someone. I think you need to respect the intelligence of the audience. You know that if a guy is like 4 and 8 with an 8 ERA, he's not doing very well. You know. So to me, I'd rather just say he's struggling, but I don't want to bury. I don't want to bury the guy either.
But I've also noticed that when you say someone's struggling, the way you say it says more about it. You can say the same word 5 different ways and get 5 different reactions out of it. So
Yeah. Hopefully you get the idea.
Hey Ken, there was a part of the book you talked about kind of calming Bill down when the A's were playing like crap, they weren't very good. And you said that was kind of a take me back moment where you know, felt like it was the first time you really had to calm him down. Can you talk about that?
I don't remember that. I don't remember ever doing that. I remember when he went crazy in Texas.
I think that must.
And I had to confront him, you know, it was the only time I ever confronted him when he went, you know, and obviously the result of that was he didn't go there anymore. When I told him, I said, hey Bill, because that was the night that he got so pissed off at Texas for a variety of reasons. They started slamming all of his books. I'm doing the 3rd inning.
Yeah.
It's like, here's the 2-1 pitch. And he's throwing books on the floor in his briefcase and all that. Then here's the 3-1 pitch. And then he slams the door and he walks out. I'm trying to do a game here. So the next day I went up to him and I said, Bill, I gotta tell you, I'm sorry, but I got a job to do here. You know, I mean, please respect it. And I hate to do that. You're talking to God here. And he felt that. He really did. He didn't react. He didn't get defensive. I think he kind of realized that Texas wasn't for him.
That was the weather, the fact that the game was so long.
Well, yeah, it was everything that conspired against him. It was, the games were, the Wild West Alcoholic Dreams game was 17-16.
Yeah.
May 5th of 2000. The length of the games, the wind. Bill hated wind because Bill was very meticulous in the way that he would put his notes out on the desk. And if the wind would blow something away, he would just freak out. The scorebook would be blowing over some of his notes. And so that really drove him nuts. And then he didn't like Texas to begin with. And then the ballpark, you're a long ways from the field there. And it's not easy to see the ball all the time. So all that stuff kind of added up. He would go sometimes early in the year and late, but he never went in the summertime. He had after that. Then he, of course, never went to interleague games except San Francisco.
Well, I think there was that game a couple of years ago. I think you guys were in Toronto, and weren't the lights in the press box out?
Well, you ever did pay attention?
I think I was driving back home from going up into Washington that time, so I was listening on the radio, and just there was a comment about, I guess they were yelling at us because we got a light on in the booth.
Right, we had a light. There was a light on in the booth because it's kind of dingy in the Rogers Center when they don't open the roof. And we had a light on so we could see our scorebooks and our notes. And somebody, I don't know if the center fielder or someone said it was distracting.
Oh, boy.
So,
Well, it's just one of those little anecdotes.
yeah, you were talking about the big words.
Did he have a favorite stadium that was the Coliseum, or I don't know, where he ranked the Coliseum among places to broadcast?
I think we both really liked Safeco Field in Seattle a lot. And he was a big fan of New York. But like in the Lon and Willa chapter, there's like, and this is like the editors kind of threw this in to pay homage to Bill, I think. You know, the capricious and penurious Charlie Finn. So to throw a few big words in there.
Those are all the good words. I'm like, man, Ken's really diving into the vocab.
And, you know, a couple of them, and then, you know, the contentious and colorful Charlie O's.
They were sprayed all over that book.
Did
I'd
any
be
good
constantly
stories,
looking to see what these words mean.
did any good stories, I assume they're all in there, but is there anything that got left out that we should know about?
Yeah, what was the first story on the cutting room floor? The last one, you know?
I can't really think of anything that stands out, honestly, that isn't in there. I think most of the stuff's in there. Honestly, I really do.
Nothing that Kathleen vetoed or?
No, nothing that was vetoed. We went with tour on a couple things, and you know, even the eating chapter, there was this debate on whether to put the stuff in there on, you know, the faint sulfurous haze. Yeah, you know. There was a little debate on how far to go with that. You know.
I think we all figured that out.
You know, like the frogs returned in the booth. A couple people said, "Did you have to put that in there?" You know, so there was a little bit of debate on that.
Ken,
Yes.
I have a